For the present-day companies, see Rolls-Royce Holdings plc in Rolls-Royce Motor Cars. For other uses, see Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce Limited is a renowned British car manufacturing and, later, aero-engine manufacturing company founded by Charles Stewart Rolls and Sir Frederick Henry Royce on 15 March 1906 as the result of a partnership formed in 1904. In addition to the company's reputation for superior engineering quality, which has led to its epithet as the best car in the world, Rolls-Royce Limited was known for manufacturing the high-powered engines responsible for land and air speed records as well as successful performances in automobile racing. In 1971, Rolls-Royce was crippled by the costs of developing the advanced RB211 jet engine, resulting in the nationalization of the company as Rolls-Royce Limited. In 1973, the car division was separated from the parent company as Rolls-Royce Motors. Rolls-Royce Limited continued as a nationalized company until it was privatized in 1987 as Rolls-Royce plc. History. In 1884, Henry Royce started an electrical and mechanical business. He made his first car, a two-cylinder Royce 10, in his Manchester factory in 1904, and was introduced to Charles Rolls at the Midland Hotel, Manchester on 4 May of that year. Rolls was proprietor of an early motor car dealership, C.S. Rolls & Ampco, in Fulham. In spite of his preference for 3- or 4-cylinder cars, Rolls was impressed with the Royce 10, and in a subsequent agreement on 23 December 1904 agreed to take all the cars Royce could make. There would be 4 models, a 10-horsepower, two-cylinder model selling at £395, a 15-horsepower three-cylinder at £500, a 20-horsepower four-cylinder at £650, a 30-horsepower six-cylinder model priced at £890. All would be badged as Rolls-Royces, and be sold exclusively by Rolls. The first Rolls-Royce car, the Rolls-Royce 10-horsepower, was unveiled at the Paris Salon in December 1904. During 1906, Royce had been developing an improved six-cylinder model with more power than the Rolls-Royce 30-horsepower, initially designated the 40/50ths of a horsepower. This was the company's first all-new model. In March 1908, Claude Johnson, commercial managing director and sometimes described as the hyphen in Rolls-Royce, succeeded in persuading Royce and the other directors that Rolls-Royce should concentrate exclusively on the new model, and all the earlier models were duly discontinued. After the introduction of the Phantom model in 1925, this 40/50ths model was referred to as the Silver Ghost. The new 40/50ths was responsible for the company's early reputation with over 6,000 built. Its chassis was used as a basis for the first British armoured car used in both World Wars. In 1921, the company opened a second factory in Springfield, Massachusetts in the United States, where a further 1,701 Springfield Ghosts were built. This factory operated for 10 years, closing in 1931. It was located at the former American Wire Wheel factory on Hendy Street, with the administration offices at 54 Waltham Avenue. Springfield was the earlier location for the Duryea Motor Wagon Company, the location where the first American gasoline-powered vehicle was built. After the First World War, Rolls-Royce successfully avoided attempts to encourage the British car manufacturers to merge. Faced with falling sales of the 40/50ths, the company introduced the smaller, cheaper 20 in 1922, effectively ending the one-model policy followed since 1908. In 1931, Rolls-Royce acquired the much smaller rival car maker Bentley after the latter's finances failed to weather the onset of the Great Depression. From soon after World War II until 2002, standard Bentley and Rolls-Royce cars were often identical apart from the radiator grille and minor details. In 1933, the color of the Rolls-Royce radiator monogram was changed from red to black because the red sometimes clashed with the coachwork color selected by clients, and not as a mark of respect for the passing of Royce, as is commonly stated. During the Second World War, the British government asked Rolls-Royce to open a shadow factory in Crewe to manufacture aircraft parts. After the war, in 1946, Rolls-Royce and Bentley car production moved to Crewe, where they began to assemble complete cars with bodies from the pressed steel company for the first time. Previously they had built only the chassis, leaving the bodies to specialist coach builders. Cars chassis only, no R-built body until Silver Dawn 1904-06 10 horsepower, 1905-05 15 horsepower, 1905-08 20 horsepower, 1905-06 30 horsepower, 1905-06 V8, 1906-25 40 50th Silver Ghost, 1922-29 20, 1925-29 40 50th Phantom, 1929-36 20 25ths, 1929-35 Phantom 2, 1936-38 25 30ths. 1936-39 Phantom 3, 1938-39 Wraith, 1946-59 Silver Wraith, 1949-55 Silver Dawn with bodies by Pressed Steel Company, Cowley, 1950-56 Phantom IV, 1955-65 Silver Cloud Standard Saloon with bodies by Pressed Steel Co. 1959-68 Phantom V, 1965-80 Silver Shadow Standard Saloon, totally a R-built car, built by Rolls-Royce Motors after 1973, 1968-92 Phantom V, chassis by Rolls-Royce Motors after 1973. Bentley models, chassis only 1933-37 Bentley 3.5L 1936-39 Bentley 4.25L, 1939-41 Bentley Mark V aircraft Rolls-Royce thrust measuring rig, Rolls-Royce Mustang Mk.X, aero engines in 1907 Charles Rolls, whose interests had turned increasingly to flying, tried unsuccessfully to persuade Royce and the other directors to design an aero engine. When World War I broke out in August 1914, Rolls-Royce were taken by surprise. As a manufacturer of luxury cars, the company was immediately vulnerable, and Claude Johnson thought the bank would withdraw its overdraft facility on which Rolls-Royce depended at the time. Nevertheless, believing that war was likely to be short-lived, the directors initially decided not to seek government work making aero engines. However, this position was quickly reversed and the company was persuaded by the War Office to manufacture 50 air-cooled V8 engines under license from Renault. Meanwhile, the Royal Aircraft Factory asked Rolls-Royce to design a new 200 horsepower engine. Despite initial reluctance, they agreed, and during 1915 developed the company's first aero engine, the 12-cylinder Eagle. This was quickly followed by the smaller 6-cylinder Hawk, the 190 horsepower Falcon, and, just before the end of the war, the larger 675 135 horsepower Condor. Throughout World War I, Rolls-Royce struggled to build aero-engines in the quantities required by the War Office. However, with the exception of Brazil Straker in Bristol, the company resisted pressure to license production to other manufacturers, fearing that the engine's much admired quality and reliability would risk being compromised. Instead, the Derby factory was extended to enable Rolls-Royce to increase its own production rates. Around half the aircraft engines used by the Allies in World War I were made by Rolls-Royce. By the late 1920s, aero engines made up most of Rolls-Royce's business. Henry Royce's last design was the Merlin aero engine, which was first flown in prototype form in 1935, although he had died in 1933. This was developed from the R engine, which had powered a record-breaking Supermarine S-6B seaplane to almost 400 miles per hour in the 1931 Schneider Trophy. The Merlin was a powerful supercharged V12 engine and was fitted into many World War II aircraft. The British Hawker Hurricane, Supermarine Spitfire, de Havilland Mosquito, Avro Lancaster, Vickers Wellington. It also transformed the North American P-51 Mustang into a competitor for the best fighter of its time. Its engine, a Merlin engine built by Packard under license. Over 160,000 Merlin engines were produced, including over 30,000 by the Ford Motor Company at Trafford Park, Manchester. During the war, most Rolls-Royce flight testing of engines was carried out from Hucknall Aerodrome. The Merlin crossed over into military land vehicle use as the Meteor, powering the Centurion tank among others. Many Meteor engines used engine blocks and parts that failed requirements for high-performance engines, but were suitable for use in the derated 480 kW Meteor. Rolls-Royce came into jet turbines through an exchange of assets with Rover, and in the post-World War II period Rolls-Royce made significant advances in gas turbine engine design and manufacture. The Dart and Tyne turboprop engines were particularly important, enabling airlines to cut times for shorter journeys whilst jet airliners were introduced on longer services. The Dart engine was used in Armstrong Whitworth or 660 Argosy, Avro 748, Fokker F-27 Friendship, Handley Page Herald and Vickers Viscount aircraft, whilst the more powerful Tyne powered the Breguet Atlantique, Transall C-160 and Vickers Vanguard, and the senior N4 hovercraft. Many of these turboprops are still in service. Amongst the jet engines of this period was the RB-163 Spey, which powers the Hawker Siddeley Trident, the AC-111, Grumman Gulfstream II and Fokker F-28. During the late 1950s and 1960s there was a significant rationalization of all aspects of British aerospace, and this included aero-engine manufacturers. In 1966, Rolls-Royce acquired Bristol Siddeley and incorporated it as the Bristol Siddeley division. Bristol Siddeley, with its principal factory at Filton, near Bristol, had a strong base in military engines, including the Olympus, Viper, Pegasus and Orpheus. They were also manufacturing the Olympus 593 Mk610 to be used in Concorde in collaboration with SNECMA. They also had a turbofan project with SNECMA. Leavesden Aerodrome, Watford, was originally owned by the Ministry of Defence and used during World War II for the manufacture of Mosquito and Halifax aircraft. For a number of years, Rolls-Royce used the site for the manufacture of helicopter engines until the site closed in June 1993. The former Rolls-Royce factory at Watford is now known as the Leavesden Film Studios and has produced world-famous films such as James Bond, Star Wars and Harry Potter. Military vehicles diesel engines. Rolls-Royce started to produce diesel engines in 1951. Initially, these were intended for heavy tractors and earth movers, but later, they were installed in lorries, railcars, diesel multiple units and Sentinel shunting locomotives. Rolls-Royce took over Sentinel's Shrewsbury factory for diesel engine production in 1956. The Rolls-Royce diesel business was acquired by Perkins in the 1980s. Torque converters. The railcar engines were often used with twin-disc torque converters which were built by Rolls-Royce under license from Twin Disc of the United States. Twin Disc is the name of the company and does not describe the construction of the torque converter. Nationalization. Financial problems caused largely by development of the new RB211 turbofan engine led, after several cash subsidies, to the company being nationalized by the Heath government in 1971. The new company had among its board members Lord Cole, Sir Arnold Weinstock, Hugh Conway, Dr. Stanley Hooker, Sir William Cook, Sir St. John L. Stubb, and Sir Charles L. Worthy. Delay in production of the RB211 engine has been blamed for the failure of the technically advanced Lockheed L1011 TriStar, which was beaten to launch by its chief competitor, the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. In 1973, the motor car business was spun off as a separate entity, Rolls-Royce Motors. The main business of aircraft and marine engines remained in public ownership until 1987, when it was privatized as Rolls-Royce plc, one of many privatizations of the Thatcher government. Rolls-Royce of America. Rolls-Royce of America Inc. was formed by Rolls-Royce to meet the massive and growing U.S. car market by building a plant in Springfield, Massachusetts. The first chassis was completed in 1921. Coach building was provided by Rolls-Royce Custom Coachwork, and later by Brewster and Amp Co. at the Brewster Building in Long Island City, New York.